So I am basically re-recording this and I am trying a new setup for it. Um, the only reason I'm doing this response video to the Bob Wells video about the Jackery is because I still see things come up in my comments about it that I basically consider not to be true. And instead of writing an essay every time these comments pop up, I thought it might be more conducive to just do a video about it, especially since this comment is repeated. Now, there is no such thing as subtlety on the internet or nuance or like gray area, it seems to be. I had a mixed response to the launch that Jackery did for the Jackery 1500 and the Jackery 2000. I actually had no complaints about the units. I've never used those particular units, and the units from Jackery that I have used, I do like. What I did have some criticism of was the number of panels that seem to be adding up as we get to the larger sizes of the Jackery. And that was where most of my criticism came from. And also, like, I was like, honestly, like, I think we're getting into a price range where I can see this getting harder and harder for people, even if they are interested in sticking with Jackery. But a lot of my criticism was really about the panels more than the actual Jackery power stations themselves. But because there's no nuance on the internet, somehow they got translated to I was trash talking Jackery and that I hated Jackery, which is a lie. Right now, my entire life, the only reason I have power to do this video is because of Jackery. So that's pretty much not true. Do I think that Jackery is perfect and they never make a mistake? I also don't think that's true. So I don't know. There's no nuance on the internet. So in addition to that, I'd also like to say that I completely think Bob Wells is a good guy with always well-meaning intention. I actually have pretty positive feelings about Bob Wells, and I think everyone should support Homes on Wheels Alliance. I think Homes on Wheels Alliance is doing great work. This specifically has to do with the content in this video. It is not an attack on a fellow YouTube creator. I completely respect Bob's opinion about the Jackery. I respect anybody's opinion about the Jackery or any power station or any choice as an opinion, as long as it doesn't become attacking anyone else or belittling anyone else. So that's being said, it won't matter. People will still act like I'm attacking Bob. I'm not attacking Bob of Cheap RV Living. For those of you who aren't familiar with him, which is hard to believe in the van life community, I'm talking about Bob Wells of the channel Cheap RV Living. And we're going to be looking at his video on specifically the Jackery 1000 and the solar panel. But I think a lot of this discussion applies to the Jackery as a choice. And that's what it is. It's one of many choices you can make when you're thinking about what kind of power you want in your van or RV or cabin, or what you want for backup power in an emergency, for camping trips, for weekend trips. Like, what is the value of that choice and is it worth it, is really what we're talking about in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the video. Give me a second here. And then we hang on a second. We don't need to see the intro. We're just going to discuss some of the things in the video. So yeah, let's get to Bob himself. We don't really need to see that part of it. Also, we're going to change perspectives a little bit here. There we go. This is my channel. Bob's not going to be bigger than me. All right, let's do this.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my next video. Today we're continuing our discussion of super cheap and super easy ways to get solar. Today we are looking at the Jackery 500 and the Jackery 100 watt solar panel. Now this is in fact a super easy way to get solar. If you want the easiest possible way to have solar power and electricity in your van or your car, this is it. You just write it, you just go to Amazon, you buy this stuff, and you're in business. You just have to plug these two together, and that's as simple as pie. So It's easy, but it's really, really expensive. The one thing I want you to see in this series is if it's super cheap and super easy, it doesn't work all that well. For absolute minimum needs, it'll be fine, but for much more, no. The more
All right, so before he goes on anymore here, I'd like to say if you want to do something like serious with your vehicle, you should not be buying a Jackery. Like if you want a serious big system that is going to run some major power, you should not be looking at a Jackery. You should be looking into either building your own system from batteries, or you should be looking at Will Prose's milk crate system. I'll see if I can throw a card up for that video. If you're really looking to like be serious and really get into it and get into the details, you should be looking at how far can I go with really doing a custom system. You should not be looking at a Jackery, period. So if your basic needs is what it's designed to cover, you could argue other power stations or other situations do a better job at those basic needs, but it was never designed to do more than basic needs. It's designed for people who feel like I just want to have something, plug it in and have it work. And that's what it's designed for. So there is no power station out there. And some people will argue with me about some of the really big ones that are starting to come out. But until you get into the category of a Titan power station or something like that, which is not cheap, these systems are designed for simple needs, simple backup power, simple camping. They're not designed to do something complex. Now, that does not mean people aren't doing complex things with them, but that's not what they're designed for anyway.
more you expect out of your electrical system as we go up the ladder, the much more expensive it gets. So this will probably meet most of your needs, not all probably, but most of the average person, this will meet their needs. But it's not cheap. This is $500 for a 500 watt hour, 518 watt hour battery, and it also has a 500 watt pure sine inverter. That's nice. That's really, really nice. This will meet your needs. And this is a single 100 watt panel that works really well. It's a good panel, and it connects to this, and it's $300. This is $800 for 100 watts and a 500 watt hour battery. This is not cheap. This is extraordinarily expensive. If you're thinking this is cheap, you're mistaken. It's easy, but it's very expensive.
All right, so Bob's going to go on more about the expense of the Jackery. There is something that I always had a slight problem with, is he's acting like you have to buy the Jackery panel. Now, the way to make it easiest on yourself is, in fact, to buy the Jackery panel. That is going to be the easiest solution, the easiest no thought into it solution, the easiest I don't have to do any extra step solution is to buy the Jackery panels to go with the Jackery power station. And in fact, on the Jackery website, if you buy them paired as a solar generator, then you will get even a little discount. And now the amount of money you're saving will vary from package to package. But if you want to get the whole Jackery package on the Jackery website, you'll save a little bit of money buying them bundled off the website. But there also is another alternative that's being ignored here. This is not a sponsored video, by the way. This is just a video I'm doing because I want to do it. And that's why I can talk about mixing things up here and being a little bit creative. And a lot of people who are not very schooled in solar have figured this out and made the Jackery work for them this way. In fact, this is how I have my personal Jackery hooked to roof panels. The Jackery was the best choice for me, because when I need to move my entire battery system out the way, all I do is unplug the one cable that's plugged into the battery, move the Jackery out of my way, do whatever work I need to do in the box truck, and then when I'm ready to put everything back in, I literally plug the battery back in. I could not do that with a self-built system. And so for me in this situation, and it may have some applications for other people, that makes it appealing. I literally, to move my battery bank, all I have to do is pick up this one unit, move it out the way, move it back in the way, move it around the room. And some people really do enjoy that. But that's not my point. My point is, let me get this tab up. I have all my tabs ready, but I'm just learning how to do this. So give me a second here. I'm going to pull up a tab, and basically this right here is the key to saving a lot of money. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. This is one of many. I'll link this one in the description just because I pulled it up. But this is one of many 8mm to MC4 adapters available on Amazon. And that's all you need to look for is the 8mm to MC4 thing. You're looking for the 8mm and that little plug area on the M, which is called an MC4 connector. And once you have that, you only need one more thing to be able to connect to a roof panel, and that's the roof panel itself. So let's stop this screen and let me pull up this other screen. So here is a Renogy 100 watt panel, and it costs about $99. The adapter cost about $17. That is less than half the cost of a Jackery 100 watt panel, and you can mount this to the roof. It's not a very difficult workaround. Plenty of people have figured out how to do this. Some people buy their own suitcase panels and do this. But if it has an 8mm connection, which is becoming fairly common in solar panels, you can use an alternative panel that might be cheaper and still get the value of the Jackery box itself. Now, if you're saying, I still don't think that Jackery box, in this case, what Bob is talking about, the Jackery 500 is worth $500, or you don't think the Jackery 1000 is worth the money, you know, if it's too much and you can't afford what you can't afford, we can talk about that as we continue to watch Bob's video. So let's pop back over the Bob's video and let's listen to him a little bit more.
Not only that, but this Jackery does not use a LifePo 4 lithium battery. This is what you have to understand. There are different kinds of lithium batteries. The chemistry inside a different lithium battery is always different. LifePo 4, which is iron and phosphate. It's an iron phosphate. It's Li is for lithium. It's Fe, which is iron, and it's Po, which is phosphate. And so it's LifePo, lithium iron phosphate. That will last you 2,000 cycles and is the safest of all the commercial mainline chemistries used. But it'll last you 2,000 cycles. This is not LifePo 4, and it is rated at 500 cycles. If you used a cycle a day, it will last you about a year and a half. If you used a cycle every other day, which most of us living in a car or a van will, it might last you 3 years. So not only is this very expensive, $500 and $300, $800 for what you're seeing right here, it's not going to last you long. You'll be lucky if you get 3 years. In fact, that's the rated life, is about 3 years. All
right, so this is where a lot of people jumped on this from this video. And I know for a fact it's from this video, and it pops up in my comments all the time, where people were like, you can only charge it 500 times. That is not true by any stretch of the imagination. Now, what Bob said is factual. A LifePo battery has a longer life, and LifePo is not what they're using in the Jackery. Yes, it is rated at 500 cycles. That rating is based on like testing they do in a lab. It's not a ticking time bomb. It's not counting itself down to 500 cycles. It's a rating they came up with in a lab. every battery that exists has some sort of number of life cycles. I mean, that's just part of batteries. That includes the battery in your cell phone. You may notice after a while that your cell phone doesn't charge as efficiently or doesn't last as long. It also has a battery in it. And most of the new ones aren't replaceable because, you know, companies going to company so you can buy new things. So your laptops, all those things have batteries that have a cycle life. They can only be recharged so many times and then they will not stop working. They will degrade. That is what commonly happens, is a degradation. Once the Jackery, and we're talking about the ones that are rated at 500 cycles, the new units are rated at more cycles, but I'd have to look it up and I'm not going to look it up right now. But the 1000, the 500, and everything under it, I think are all rated at 500 cycles. So what is a cycle? It is not charging it to 100% 500 times. It's the amount of charges that add up to 100% charge. So if you only drain it 25% one day and then charge it 25%, so it's at 100, you haven't used the cycle yet. You've used like a quarter of a cycle. If you drain it to 50% and then charge it back up to 100% the next day, now you've done 75% of charging. You still have not used the cycle. If the next day you only use 25% again, or even if you use a little bit more than 25%, you've used your first cycle and you've nicked a little bit into that next cycle. This is not an exact science and it is not a ticking time bomb. There are people who have their Jackery 240s that, as far as I know, and if this is different for you, you can say so in the comments, and they're still kicking as well as they did as the day they came out of the box. And as you know, like the Jackery 240 was pretty much their flagship power station, and most people's power stations are still kicking. So again, this is an estimate, and a lot of the life of batteries will depend on how you treat said battery, how long it lasts. So one, people are misunderstanding cycles. It doesn't mean you can only charge it 500 times. And this is the important part that this video sort of clouds over. When you reach that 500 cycles, it doesn't stop working. It may possibly lose 20%. So that means if you have the Jackery 1000, then I'm using that one because that's a flat number and I don't want to do math. Then it'll go down to about 800 watt hours instead of about 1000 watt hours. Wait, I can do this. So that means the Jackery 500 would go down to about 400 watt hours instead of 500 watt hours. And then over time, a very long time, eventually you might have such low capacity that you just don't find it worth it. Now, I don't see most Jackeries as a forever system. And by the time it actually is useless, which is going to take a while, by the time it's actually useless, hopefully you will have moved on to, like, if you're doing full time, I fully expect that at some point you're going to want your own DIY system that's custom to your needs. And when you do, I pretty much am sure most Jackery owners will still have Jackeries that work just fine, and it will still be a backup system. It will still be a tabletop system. It will still be an additional portable system that's floating around their van that's floating around their van that just made getting started a little bit easier. Like in my case, because I'm building it out while living in it, the Jackery allows me to have a way better, power setup than I could have if I was trying to like have two batteries in a box and have all these wires coming out. Like for me personally, my life has been made easier by the fact that I have this power station. Now, some people pointed out I got the Jackery 1000 for free to review. There's a lot of things that I've paid money for sooner moving into this box truck because they were necessary for me to get by from day to day. Now, maybe I would have bought the Jackery 500 instead of the 1000, depending on my finances at the time, but I still would have gotten a Jackery. Now, the thing is, that reality doesn't exist. I was lucky enough to already have a Jackery and use it in the way that I'm using it right now. But I personally, in the situation that I'm in right now, like having a removable battery system. I like having an easy system that's not going to take a lot of my energy so I can focus my energy elsewhere in the build. So there are reasons for getting a Jackery. There's also reasons for not getting a Jackery, such as the cycle life. But what I'm finding is when a lot of people pull this little piece of the video talking about the cycle life, they're talking about it incorrectly. It will not be done in 3 years unless you kick it off a mountain. It may be operating at 80% capacity instead of 100% capacity, because after those 500 cycles, it is not broken. It does not stop working. It is operating at 80% of whatever capacity you got it at, maybe. Like I said, it's not a ticking clock. Now, it probably will happen somewhere around 500 cycles. Maybe it'll happen at 552. Maybe it'll happen if you've really abused it at 495. The life cycle is something you do want to consider when buying a battery, and how much this is a long-term investment or supplementary investment as opposed to a permanent investment, and what that means to you. But just get the cycle life thing right. It is not going to drop dead and stop working entirely after 500 cycles. And I think Bob Wells understood that, but it just wasn't communicated properly in his video. And that's something I really wanted to get to the point
of this system. So $800 that you're replacing every 3 years. Now, this one you won't replace. You only replace this. The panel should last you the rest of your life. Although I found that the fabric on these things, this is a fabric panel. And it's a good one. I mean, I have no problem recommending this.
All right, so I'm going to pause this here because he's going to talk about the panels. And I've already talked about the fact that you don't have to buy this panel. You can buy literally almost any panel you want. You have to know a little bit. Basically, you want something that just has the box and the two wires hanging. Usually with MC4 connectors, that's going to be your easiest thing. Most panels in the United States, I don't know about other countries. I know some other countries might lean to some other type of connector. The Jackery 1000, for example, uses an Anderson connector, which is less common, at least in the United States. I don't know about other countries. But if you get any panel with MC4 connectors and then get an MC4 to 8mm adapter, you can literally hook up almost any panel you'd want to buy to the Jackery. You don't need anything with the charge controller. You just need like the panel with its little controller box and an MC4 to 8mm connector. Now, I personally have not done a comparison of how the Jackery panel performs in comparison to an alternative panel. Obviously, these two items were built for compatibility, so it's like buying a Mac and an iPhone. I don't own a Mac or an iPhone, but I probably would buy a Mac before I bought an iPhone. I like my Android phones. I don't see myself giving them up, but I might buy a Mac if I had that kind of money one day. My compatibility between my phone and my laptop would suffer, but I might have a cheaper phone that makes me happy. Same thing with the Jackery. If you want like the easiest plug and play ever, you can buy the Jackery panel in addition to the power station, but it's not your only option. It's just a box with a charge controller connecting to a solar panel. And you can kind of open up your choices and cheapen your costs if you embrace that as part of it. You know, and also like I wanted a permanently mounted panel. I personally don't find a lot of situations where a panel I would have to physically sit out on the ground works for me. I know for a fact some of my subscribers feel completely different, not necessarily about the Jackery panel, but about having portable panels that you can just flip open and put on the ground in comparison to mounted panels. And you can look at other videos for the benefits of each, but it doesn't matter. You could get a different kind of suitcase panel if really the panel is the cost prohibitive, part of the equation for you. So let's see if we can get past the panel. A lot of what he says about the panel, I don't disagree with. So let's jump ahead a little bit.
Easy, then this is the answer. I don't recommend this. I mean, not only that, but if any one part of this fails, so it's all in here. It will allow the 12-volt charging. It will allow electric 110-volt charging. It will allow solar charging. it has then the inverter to get the 110 out, and it has the cigarette lighter plugs and the USB. It's amazing. They've packed all that stuff into this little box. Here's the problem. Any one part fails, you throw it away. Or you don't throw it away. You send it back to them. You wait for months. You pay them a lot of money. And again,
I'd like to say Bob Wells is assuming here. Like, he's totally assuming. He's never sent a unit back to Jackery for replacement. I have not ever either. But one, it wouldn't be. They're gonna find a way to not charge you for it. Probably, if anyone has actually had to send back a Jackery for repair or replacement, I would love to get comments about that in the comments section. From what I've seen in passing, just going over the internet, the process, when it, on the rare case that it happens, is pretty smooth. They sort of value their reputation in that way, from what I know. If other people have experienced otherwise, I definitely want to know about it. But I think he's making this way more difficult and way more expensive than it actually is. Now, he is correct about the fact that if it breaks, there's really nothing for you to do except give up your power station. I don't know how often this actually happens to be a large concern, but if it's a concern at all, it would be a reason not to buy the Jackery. That's a very fair reason to say I would be worried about buying the Jackery. But it comes down to the trailer motorhome argument that happens all the time in the nomad community. Some people are like, they like having a trailer or, something that's not their vehicle as their house, so that if their car needs to go in the shop, they haven't also lost their house. And that's why they prefer trailers and things like that. And then there's people who's like, I don't want to have to get out of my trailer and get into my vehicle and connect it to a trailer and do all these things just to leave a situation. I like that I'm in an all-in-one vehicle where all I have to do is jump in the cab and drive if something feels like it's going to go south. And neither choice is wrong. It really comes down to what you value, and there are positives and negatives to each choice. And when I say a motorhome, I'm talking about camper vans, anything that's an all-in-one where you could literally get out of bed, jump into the driver's seat, and drive away. And some people don't like trailers because it doesn't allow them that. Well, that's a bad situation. But also a bad situation is if your whole house is going to end up in the repair shop and you have to figure out where you're going to stay. That's also a bad situation. So it's just a matter of, calculating what worries you most in your situation and making a decision. So yeah, I think it's the same thing with choosing an all-in-one power station or choosing to DIY things by their components. Is yes, that is part of the inherent risk, but also there's an inherent risk in living in a vehicle anyway, when you can live in a house and have grid power. So yeah, you calculate your risks and rate the thing that's most important to you. Let's go back to the video.
If you next, we're going to look at a kit that is so much cheaper. It's not easy anymore, but it's so much cheaper. Again, 100-watt kit, $800. Now, I'm going to put up on the screen a Renogy 100-watt.
He's still going on about that $800. That is if you choose to charge via the Jackery solar panel, which is not your only option. Heck, you could just get the power station and charge it while you drive, depending on your frequency of driving. Or way back when I started out, I still had a day job I went to regularly. Right now, I'm doing contractual work. At this exact moment, I don't have a show. It was pushed back because of COVID. And so rehearsals were pushed back to the end of the month. So I know you guys have been seeing videos where I was talking about work. So I had a show that ended around the end of February, and I was supposed to have a show that started in mid-March. That did not happen. That got pushed. Rehearsals for that show got pushed back to the end of the month. So right now I'm in a little window where I don't have any other employment except for making these YouTube videos. So what was my point? I don't even remember. I know. So what I used to do way back in the day when I started out living in my car is I had a little cheap knockoff power station. I don't recommend ever getting one of those. Always get something from a reputable company, especially an all-in-one unit, so that if something goes wrong, you have somebody to call. But I had a cheap little knockoff power station. And what I did was I took that power station into work with me and I plugged it into a wall. And then all the power I got from doing that, I could bring back to the vehicle with me. In my show that just closed, we had a generator on site and there was a bunch of extra power. So every time I was at the show working that night, I plugged in and I charged my Jackeries up to 100%. And then I was able to like go home and overnight have 100% power. It was on solar panels during the day. And then I just topped it off at the show at night. So it really depends on what your options are, how you choose to recharge your Jackery. A Jackery on its own could be really valuable depending on your situation. Without having to buy the panel and without having to buy any panel, to be honest. You could even have two and rotate them out at a friend's house if you have a friend like that who you have constant access to. All right, let's get back to the video.
Kit that costs $200. And it's a 100-watt panel, and it's a hard panel. It'll last you 30 years. That panel's going to last you 30 years. It's a controller. It's the feet. It's the wiring. It's virtually everything you need. You will have to buy another couple of little pieces. Not much. And they won't be expensive. They don't include fuses, and I don't know why. So it's $200 for a 100-watt system. And it doesn't include the battery. You go to Walmart and you buy a $100 Walmart battery, and you've got the exact same system for $300 that this costs for $800. Now you still have to buy the inverter.
That's not true. I mean, it's partially true and partially not true. First of all, a battery you get from Walmart for $100 is not going to be the same as the battery that you have in the Jackery. I mean, by the very nature of it, it's a Walmart battery, and there's nothing wrong with like starting with a Walmart battery if that's what you can afford. Also, that kit, as he's mentioned, does not have an inverter. It doesn't have a fuse box. It doesn't have an integrated way for you to hook up 12-volt power and accessories. It doesn't have an integrated way for you to just plug in your laptop or whatever and get going. It's not the same thing. Now, it is a cheaper path to get there, but you have to know what else to buy. If you buy that kit and a battery, all you can do is charge a battery. You can't get any power out of that battery.
You still have to buy the things that you put on the terminals to get the 12-volt outlet. And you don't have 110-volt charging. So it's not exactly the same, but it's so much cheaper. This is $800 to get that ease, and this kit that I'm showing you is $200 for the controller and the solar panel and the entire kit to array it. It will last you and last you and last you. And my goodness, it's something breaks, you just replace it. One little piece, they're all cheap. All the parts on this thing are cheap. That's why it's only $200. Renogy has a good support. They'll support you. If you have a problem with it, they'll help you fix it. If it's under warranty, they'll just send you a new one. Renogy is a great company. Okay, now I'm putting up another panel, another kit. This is made by EcoWorthy. Look at the price. $137.99 for a 100-watt panel, the controller, the wiring, just about everything you need. Again, you'll have to buy your own fuses. And there are a few other little pieces you're going to have to buy. But it's $135 as opposed to $800 for this Jackery. And then you still have to go out to Walmart and buy a $100 battery. Or you can, on Amazon, you can buy a universal battery, 100 amp hour. Again, 100 amp hour. This is only 50 amp hours. It's double the size of the battery of the Jackery. And you can get that for $170. So it's $300.
All right, so I have to interrupt him here. So first of all, yes, the 500-watt Jackery is about a 50 amp hour battery. Oversimplifying things just to make it simple. So let me actually pull something up so that we can talk about it. Share a screen. Chrome tab. So this is the Walmart website, and this is, I'm going to assume he's talking about an Agm battery because he's definitely not talking about a lithium battery. So here is $100 50 amp hour battery from the Walmart website. I'm just using this as an example. Number one, this is an Agm battery, which is a lead acid based battery. Now, I think if you're going to go lead acid, at least put in the money to get Agm, because if you go any cheaper, you might be giving yourself more headache than you want, especially if you're new to this. Now, if you're experienced and you're like, heck, I can get by with flooded. I don't care. I don't care about the weight. I don't care about the maintenance. I just want to save money. Yes, you could definitely get by on something probably really cheap. But we're talking about the kind of people who are drawn to Jackery, who probably are in the process of educating themselves about solar or don't know much about solar and batteries. So because this is an Agm battery, you can only use half of it, which means it's actually 25 amp hours of usable energy. And Bob knows this. Like, he knows this. So in fact, to get at least in the Agm category up to 100 amp hours, in the Agm category, to kind of match what you have in the Jackery, you need to at least get a 100 amp hour battery. Because if you use half of that 100 amp hour battery, then you actually have 50 amp hours of usable energy. So that battery, I'm still learning how to do this, so it takes a little bit of finagling, but that battery is going to cost you $179. So $179, which I think is comparable to the Amazon battery he mentioned, is what you're actually going to have to spend to add a battery to those solar kits that he mentioned. Now, my first actual solar system that I built on my own was built from a kit for my minivan camper, my Toyota Sienna. And I had two Mighty Max batteries, two 100 amp hour Mighty Max batteries. And the reason why I got two 100 amp hour Mighty Max batteries was to just have 100 amp hours of usable energy, because I knew I could only use half. Now, I did have a couple of incidences of draining it too low. But, you know, that's part of what you have to really be aware of when you get lead acid batteries. And honestly, any battery you get, you should not be draining it from 0 to 100 every day, or your battery bank isn't big enough. You should always have a little bit of gap in there for a day of bad sun. Your battery should be rolling over some power from day to day, or your battery bank is too small. Like, I get questions about like running AC on a Jackery 1000. Well, maybe you could start it up, but the peak of day when you're draining the most energy is also when you're getting the most sun. So that Jackery is not going to be able to recharge enough to be usable at 100% the next day if it's trying to run an AC unit all day. So maybe if you have a small AC unit, it could turn it on, but it's definitely not the most efficient system for running it all the time or constantly. And that's when I think you should just be looking into a DIY system, or I'm sorry, you'd have to get a generator. Just get a generator. It's much better for something as demanding as AC. Now, you're going to find all kinds of people on the internet who are showing you how they're running their air conditioners off of solar. Also, really, really price what they've done to do that. Also, look at where they live, because solar is not equal everywhere. Somebody with 200 watts of solar in the middle of Arizona, where they mostly get just sun, is going to do way better than somebody up in the Utah mountains. And so you just always have to keep that in mind with solar. Gasoline in a gas generator is created equal. Solar on the sun on a solar panel is not. It's very conditional to where you are. So anyway, so there's your 100 amp hour battery. Now, if you really want to get close to and beat what's in your Jackery power station, what you really want to get is a lithium battery. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up. So you can actually get a lithium battery which would be more apples to apples. Right now, I feel like Bob is talking about apples to oranges instead of apples to apples. And this isn't really apples to apples, but it's a little bit more of a fair. Sorry, this is the Renergy one. I didn't want to do that one. I want the other one. Even though it still kind of carries through with my point, but let's see if we can get that one from Walmart. Where are you, Walmart battery? Here it is. All right, let's show you that one. So this is a LifePo, which he talked about in the beginning of his video. This is a LifePo battery from Walmart, or at least from the Walmart website. I don't know if you can pick it up in store. You probably have to get it delivered, but it's a 50 amp hour battery, and it is about $400. I don't know if Will Pros has reviewed Expert Power, but if you're ever looking into off-brand lithium style batteries, definitely always check out Will Pros or sometimes Hobotech, but I think Will Pros does more batteries. I don't know that Hobotech has a lot of things on batteries. Will Pros does, but if you can see if he's reviewed it, it'll give you a good idea of if it's quality or not. I don't know that much about Expert Power, but here's a 50 amp hour LifePo battery, which is a different lithium chemistry than the one in the Jackery, but it's lithium. You can use darn near the whole thing. It does have a way more life cycles, as you can see. But again, you'd have to take this $400 battery, not $100 battery, then pair that with your kit. You still need an inverter. You still need a fuse box or fuse block of some sort. You still need wires. You still need to know what you're doing installing it. There's stuff you still need that the Jackery has covered in their box. So whenever people go off about the price, I'm like, okay, but a LifePo battery costs $400. Now, if you're like, I want that cycle life, buy the battery and learn how to set up your own system. If you're like, you know what? I just want this to be easy, then you can go ahead and buy a Jackery. And not only are you getting the battery, you're getting the inverter, you're getting all the things that you need to buy wires for, all the things that you wire to that fuse box. Like, that's the kind of stuff they're trying to cover in that box. All the things you need to add to this battery to be able to get power out of it. Because all that kit is going to do is allow you to put power into it. It's not going to help you get power out of it. And for me personally, I did end up buying solar tools. I ended up buying crimp connectors. I ended up buying those MC4 separators. And none of that stuff was really expensive, to be honest. Like, in the grand scope of things, and the fact that I've changed vehicles now 3 times since I bought them, and I even use some of my solar tools, like installing my solar panels on my roof for my Jackery, like, they weren't a bad investment at all, but those little things will add up on you. So it's more than buying a battery and a kit. There's other stuff you have to buy. You have to know what to buy, and you have to want to do all that research. And when you're trying to figure out everything else about a build and you've never done a build, you may be interested in simplifying that step. And I personally always believe there's no wrong choice. All choices are valid. Since he talked about Renergy, and I agree with him, Renergy is a good company to go with. They have a long-term reputation. But let's take a little look at Renergy. So Renergy also has a deep cycle battery. So let's say you get the Renergy kit and you are like, I want to do the Mac Apple thing. I want all my stuff to be branded the same and know they were all, made by the same company. So again, to get the 50 amp hours that you can use that would equal that 500 watt hour Jackery, sorry, you'd have to get this battery from Renergy. It is a deep cycle 100 amp hour battery, and it's almost $300. So way more than the Walmart battery. You could get the Walmart battery or even on Amazon for like $179. This deep cycle battery from Renergy with 100 amp hours is $233. It's an Agm battery, so you can only use half of it. So this is equal to the Jackery Explorer 500. So let's see here. And then we're going to add one more thing just to talk about it. Let's look at the Renergy LifePo 4 battery. Oh my gosh, how do I keep screwing this up? We already looked at this one. Let's see. It would be interesting to see how you guys respond to this video I'm doing in StreamYard. Okay, so here is the Renergy website. There we go. So you guys should be looking at now the lithium iron phosphate battery from Renergy, and it is almost $500. Now, this does have more cycle life because it is a LifePo for 12-volt, 50 amp hour battery. So it does have more cycle life than the Jackery, but it also does not have an inverter. It does not have a way for you to just plug in a 12-volt port. And if you add it to a kit, it still won't have those things. You'll have a way to put power into the battery, but not a way to take power out of the battery. So that's something you would have to educate yourself on. And if you find that valuable, you will save some money. And I will say again, if you really want to save money, look up Will Pro's milk crate battery and embrace the work. If you don't want to, if you're just like, okay, I can have a little bit of expense here to make things easier for me right now, and that's what I need for right now, then you could go ahead and get a Jackery. And like I've always said, if you decide later, you don't have to wait for your Jackery to die to build a custom system. You could build a custom system while you're using your Jackery as your temporary power source. And then what you have is this awesome backup power source. Chrome Valdez of Vancity Life Vanlife has always used his Jackeries as backups. Like, he's always had some sort of battery system as his primary system in his van, running his lights, just as his primary power for his house. And his Jackery is a backup system that he pulls out to supplement that power, to have something portable, to have something that he can move around. I remember when he first got his fridge, it was something he used to see how much power his fridge was pulling, because he didn't have to buy anything additional to do that. The Jackery screen told him, you know, how much power the fridge was pulling and what it was doing without him having to buy additional readers and stuff to see what the battery was doing. Now he has battery readers for his battery, but I think, like, again, so many things exist, and it's an either this or that thing, and a lot of people look into Jackeries for backup power, not as primary power. Even people, not just people in houses who have frequent blackouts, also people who live in vans and just like to know they have something they can grab, either as a portable unit or as a unit that can get them through if something major fails on their primary system. So there are multiple reasons to buy the Jackery. And again, I'm talking specifically about the power station itself. It's your choice if you also want to invest in their solar panel. So let's go back to Bob's video. We're almost at the end of it. I don't know how long my video is. Oh, dang, this video's long. It'll be interesting to see how many people watch this whole thing.
$100 for the entire kit, including the battery. 100 amp hour AGM. What you're looking at now, including a battery, 100 amp hour AGM battery. Again, twice as big as the battery as the Jackery, is only $300. $170 for the battery and $140, so it's $310 for the kit. And I know Echoworthy. I know they make good stuff. You're not going to get the support you're going to get with Renergy, and Renergy has been very, very, very good to the community. They have supported Homes on Wheels Alliance. They donated, at greatly reduced price, 40 kits. We already had the solar panels. They provided everything else, which we gave away to 40 40 nomads in need, which we donated to them. Homes on Wheels Alliance, the 501c3 did. I'm a big fan of Renogy, and they have a much, no one has as good a support system. No one's going to back you up as good after the sale. You have a problem with any of the part, they're going to help you and get you squared away. So I'm a big fan of Renogy, but I do want you to know you can save a lot of money if you go with a little more off-brand name. But is that worth it to you? Maybe not. I think I would definitely go with the $200 Renogy kit because I want to be able to call them if I have a problem. I know what I'm doing and I could probably figure it out. But if you don't know what you're doing, having someone you can call is really important. Now, you call Jackery and all they're going to tell you to do is send it back. That's all they're going to do is send it and we'll repair it for you. If it's under
Bob, that's why we buy the Jackery, so that we don't have to do anything but send it in. And have them return to us a fully operational system. That's kind of the appeal of something like the Jackery. So it's not really a negative. So yeah.
Under warranty, it'll be free. You may still, I don't know if you have to pay shipping or not. Doesn't matter. This thing's big and heavy. And so it's going to be expensive to send in, and you'll probably have to pay one way. I don't know. I don't know what Jackery's policy is. At any rate, and that's only why it's under warranty, and it doesn't last for very long, and then you're out on your own. You have a problem with it, their answer is, oh yeah, send it back, we'll fix it for you. But it's only a 3-year battery anyway, and so...
It's not a 3-year battery. It's 500 cycles before you might lose capacity. And I feel like Bob knows better, but the fact that he kept painting it like it was just going to turn into a brick in 3 years, it will be out of warranty. All warranties end, and depending on, how much that's of value to you, anything you buy, I would say definitely look into a warranty. Early in my van life, I spent money on things just because they were cheaper, and that's not always a win. Sometimes spending that extra money is worth it for a company you feel is going to respond to you if you come to them with a problem. Now, rather that's Renogy on the phone, coaching you through something, or Jackery saying, send the unit in, we'll repair it or replace it and send it back. That's what you want out of spending your hard-earned dollars. And if at any point I thought a company wasn't fulfilling their warranty, then I would have a problem with them because I spent money on cheap things where I got no support. There was nobody to contact, or if you contacted somebody, it was basically just like messaging a black hole. And so the bigger names at least have a reputation to protect. So if you are going to do a DIY system, Renogy's not a bad company to go with because they do have a reputation to protect, and that is valuable when you need something fixed or help.
Isn't even going to be worth sending it in. I don't know. So those are your choices. At the top end, it's this for $800. It's super easy, very expensive, or a kit that you have to install yourself, and it's not easy at all. It's not that hard, folks. It isn't that hard. I think everyone here can do it themselves. But maybe you can't. Maybe you don't have the tools. It's just too scary. You don't have physical limitations. You just can't do it. Well, maybe you can find someone else to pay to install it. I would hope.
If you have to find somebody to pay to install your system, you're still going to end up calling somebody if something breaks because you won't be able to trace the problem. So at that point, why not get on all-in-one?
So, if not, then it's one of these other options that I've shown you. Then you just spend $800 for this. And there are bigger kits. This is a 518 watt hour. Jackery makes 1,000. Suwaki makes 1,000. A bunch of people make the 1,000.
All right, I think we've gotten to the bulk of the video, so I'm going to go ahead and click off of it. Again, I greatly respect Bob Wells, and I think one of the reasons he did this video is he wanted to protect people. And he sees value in the cheaper, how can I phrase this properly? The cheaper steps to the end game, which is a 500 watt hour system. And somewhat doesn't click into the nuance that makes people interested in Jackery or other power stations. We're talking specifically about the Jackery because this is what the subject of the video is. But in general, what appeals to people about power stations is the amount of steps it simplifies. And when you have other people do stuff for you, it's going to cost more. If you are willing to build from lithium cells, if you're willing to get the cells, get the BMS, and there's some people who don't even know what that is, do all your research and wire from cells. There is a great YouTube couple out there, and I'll try to link them in the description, called Our Way to Rome. And they have a pretty darn powerful system in their shuttle bus, but there was education involved to get there. There was a friend who was an electrician who was involved to get there. And that you can save a lot of money if you can make those things come together. You can also build from batteries and have a pretty powerful system. It's a little easier, honestly. It's not that hard. If you get a kit and a battery, it's not that hard to figure out how to hook them together. And once you understand the sort of negative, positive things, adding an inverter, adding a fuse box, figuring out how to wire things, like, it's not completely difficult. There's a couple of steps that you need to understand, but it's honestly not that hard. But it takes some time and some learning and some investment on your part to be interested and engaged with everything involved. If you are upgrading your system and that's all you're focused on, it may not be killer if that's taking all of your focus. If you are building out a van and you have to build furniture and you've never done carpentry and you have to do plumbing because you want to shower, everybody wants these darn showers, and you want to shower and a running water sink and all those things. So you need to learn plumbing too. And, you want to put tanks under your vehicle. So you need to understand how propane and how to wire it and how to get the propane to all the place. Like, if you need to learn all those things and how to wire an electrical system, it may start to feel overwhelming. So when you can find things that simplify a step, sometimes that investment is worth it. It will always be cheaper, to use an example, to go to the supermarket, buy food and prepare it yourself. Your food will last longer. You'll save money over time. I don't care what discount menu you're getting from. It's costing you more to go anywhere and buy food. By comparison, over the long term, because you're paying for the fact that another person is preparing it. You're paying for the fact that a company exists with a name on a building. You're paying for the infrastructure. If you get your mechanic friend to come over and do something to your vehicle, assuming you can't do it yourself, but you have a mechanic friend and he's working out of his backyard, it's going to be cheaper. But if you go to the dealership, it usually costs more. And why? Because the dealership has a fancy building. The dealership has employees. The dealership also has a person whose labor they need to pay for doing the work. There's a lot of factors involved in that higher cost. Jackery is putting together the battery, the inverter, the charge controller, like all that stuff that you have to buy separately. They're putting it together in a box. And most of the batteries on their own from companies like Renergy and Battleborn and such, if you just got that amount of amp hours on its own, it's honestly not that much off the price point of the Jackery. Now, if you go AGM or for some other lead acid type battery, it might be cheaper. And if you are willing to deal with the whole 50% thing, you can save money. Now, the negatives are those batteries are usually heavier. And that's the kind of research you need to do. You need to look into negatives and positives and ask yourselves if the positives are worth the price. And there are people who are going to say no, and there are people who are going to say yes. I can't tell you if you should buy a Jackery. I can only tell you why I like the Jackery. I can also debunk things where I'm like, that's not quite true. The Jackery is not on a chicken time bomb to be useless after 3 years or 500 cycles. The 500 cycle thing is a thing, and it's possibly one of the most valid things brought up about the Jackery. That is an entirely valid thing. If you get a lithium battery with the same amount of amp hours as you're going to get out of the Jackery, Usually you're in the same price range for more cycle life. And that's something you have to think about. Like how much is that a value to you that you can get more cycle life, but you have to buy all these other things. You have to figure out how to put all these other things together. You have to deal with a system that maybe you can't grab with your hand and walk out the door. We're also paying a little bit for design, to be honest, even with that foldable panel, which even Bob Wells says isn't a bad panel. And like, I have had the most criticism for the panel, but there are people who freaking love their panel and they feel like it was worth the price to get it. And I'm not going to judge them for making that choice. All I can say is, like, for me, the most value was the power station and a panel on my roof, because I don't like dealing with panels that I need to put out somewhere or remember to put out or hope to have a spot where I can put them out. I'd rather just have something on my roof and my battery is hooked to it. And in this case, my battery is the Jackery. In the future, it might be something else. All right, that's all I got for this video. I didn't expect for this to be an hour long. I've never done a response video like this. If I ever do it in the future, I guess I'll just have to get more efficient with it. And I look forward to talking to you guys in a more casual sense. So I guess I haven't gotten there in the build videos, but spoiler alert, you might have noticed there's a window up there. So I did install that window not too long ago. And so I'll need to do that a video about that. It was scary, but it's like the coolest thing I've ever done. Like that, cutting a giant hole and then like, oh my God, if I don't get this right, I have a giant hole in my box truck. And I thought I would do roof vents first, and I ended up doing window first. And hopefully I'll get to those videos this upcoming week. All right, for real, guys, I'm signing off. Box truck build videos to come. This video is not sponsored by Jackery.